It was 2 in the morning, and I was still awake. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the heater and the occasional tick of the clock on the living room wall. My husband, Tyler, was snoring heavily beside me, oblivious to the way I kept tossing and turning. At 26 weeks pregnant with twins, sleeping had become nearly impossible. Every time I tried to roll onto my side, a sharp pain shot through my lower back, and I could feel the babies shifting restlessly inside me as if they were practicing some chaotic dance routine. I sat up, wincing, and rubbed my swollen belly. "It's okay, little ones," I whispered, hoping they could somehow hear me. "We're fine. Mommy's just tired." There was no response, of course, just more uncomfortable flutters and a little kick beneath my ribs. I slid my legs off the bed and shuffled toward the kitchen, my movements slow and awkward. Walking felt like I was carrying 2 bowling balls strapped to my waist. I made a cup of tea and sat at the small dining table, staring at the dark window while the kettle clicked off behind me. Outside, Columbus was covered in frost, the streets empty, the world perfectly still. Inside, though, my mind wouldn't stop racing. I thought about how we'd gotten here. Me, exhausted and alone in my own home, while Tyler slept like he didn't have a care in the world. When I first told him I was pregnant, he'd been ecstatic. He wanted a child so badly, even begged for it, saying things like, "We need someone to carry on the Carter name. Someone who'll look up to me." I thought it was sweet, even a little romantic. But when the ultrasound showed there were 2 babies instead of 1, something inside him changed. The excitement faded almost overnight. Instead of kissing my belly like he used to or calling me his beautiful Sophia, he started making little jokes, mean ones. He'd pinch the extra weight on my hips and say, "Careful, babe, you're gonna roll away on me." Or he'd laugh when I waddled across the room and mutter, "You look like a penguin." I tried laughing along at first, telling myself he didn't mean it. But as my body changed and my energy drained, those words started cutting deeper. Tyler still expected a spotless house, hot dinners on the table, and his shirts ironed to perfection. If I complained about being tired, he'd just shrug and say, "You're pregnant, not dying. Every woman goes through it. Stop acting like it's a miracle." Sometimes I'd go to the bathroom and cry quietly so he wouldn't see me. I used to think we were in love, but lately I felt more like live-in help than a wife. The sad part? I kept telling myself it would get better once the babies were born. Maybe he'd hold them, see their tiny faces, and fall back in love with me. But deep down, there was this knot of fear I couldn't untangle. What if he didn't change? What if he stayed distant, or worse, walked away? I sipped my tea, slowly blinking back tears. The warm liquid didn't comfort me the way it used to, and I suddenly realized I hadn't heard a kind word from him in weeks. The clock on the wall ticked toward 3, and I knew I wouldn't be sleeping again tonight. So I rubbed my belly once more, whispered goodnight to the babies, and promised myself something. No matter how lonely I felt, I wouldn't let them see me break. I wasn't always this tired, heavy, or afraid. There was a time when my life felt wide open, full of choices and hope. I grew up an only child, raised by parents who were older than most of my friends' moms and dads. My father was a history professor at the local college, the kind of man who loved dusty books and quiet evenings. My mother worked as an accountant, careful and precise, always balancing every penny. They were gentle people, never yelling, never fighting in front of me, the kind of parents who believed in solving things over tea instead of shouting matches. But by the time I turned 19, everything had changed. My dad had a stroke and passed away suddenly, leaving a silence in our house that no one could fill. My mom tried to hold on, tried to keep me focused on school and the future. But cancer doesn't care about timing or effort. She was gone within a year. And just like that, I was alone. I sold the house to pay for her treatments, leaving me with little more than a scholarship and a suitcase. I moved into the university dorms, telling myself I could handle it, but the truth? I was lonely. I poured myself into studying English because it was something I loved, something that made sense when nothing else did. To cover my expenses, I put up an online ad offering English tutoring, affordable rates, patient teacher, flexible schedule. That's how I met Tyler. He was 28 at the time, already working as a warehouse manager, but struggling with his company's new international clients. He needed the basics, enough to hold a conversation without looking foolish. When he first showed up for lessons, I was nervous. He had this confident way of walking into a room, like he owned it. He smiled easily, asked about my day, and even paid more than I charged, saying, "You're worth it, Sophia. You're helping me more than you know." I remember blushing, not used to that kind of attention, especially from someone like him. Steady job, nice car, all the things I didn't have. Our lessons turned into conversations, and our conversations turned into dinners. Tyler would tell me I was smart, that he admired how I kept going even after losing my parents. He made me feel seen at a time when I was invisible to everyone else. I thought, maybe this is what love is supposed to feel like, safe. 6 months later, he asked me to move in. He said things like, "You don't need to live in those tiny dorm rooms anymore. Come home with me. Let me take care of you." And I wanted that. I wanted to belong somewhere again. We married quietly a year later. Just a courthouse wedding and a dinner with his mom, Martha, afterward. I didn't have much family left to invite, and he didn't seem to care for big celebrations anyway. I told myself it didn't matter. That love was what counted, not a fancy ceremony. At first, married life felt good. Tyler liked that I cooked and cleaned, and he'd sometimes bring me flowers or tell me how lucky he was. But little by little, things shifted. He started questioning why I still wanted to tutor, why I kept meeting friends from school. He'd say, "You don't need all that. I can provide for us. Just stay home, babe. Focus on me." It sounded sweet until it started feeling like a rule instead of a suggestion. I stopped tutoring. I stopped going out with classmates. Eventually, I stopped doing much of anything except keeping the house perfect for him. Looking back, I can see how it all happened so gradually, how love turned into permission and permission turned into control. But at the time, I thought I was just being a good wife. The first year of marriage felt normal enough. I told myself it was just two people learning how to live together, adjusting to each other's habits. But looking back now, it wasn't adjustment. It was control, slowly taking shape like vines wrapping around me before I realized I couldn't move. It started with small things. Tyler didn't like it when I spent too much time texting old classmates. "Why do you even need them?" he'd ask with a laugh. "You've got me now. Isn't that enough?" I thought he was joking until one day he grabbed my phone, scrolled through my messages, and said he didn't like me talking to guys from my English program. Next came the tutoring. He said it wasn't worth the effort, that strangers coming in and out of our apartment made him uncomfortable. "I make enough money for both of us," he said. "Why wear yourself out? Just focus on the home." I quit because I thought that's what good wives do. They support their husbands. Even the holidays felt different. My friends invited me to a winter break party, and Tyler frowned. "You don't need that crowd. We can have our own fun." So I stayed home, curled up on the couch while he played video games. One by one, my connections to the outside world disappeared, and I didn't even fight it. I told myself, this is marriage. This is what commitment looks like. His mother, Martha, only reinforced it. She'd call once a week and say things like, "Sophia, don't argue with him. Men need peace when they come home from work. Just focus on the house and starting a family. That's what keeps a marriage strong." She meant well, I think, but it only made me feel more alone. Then came the pregnancy. When I first showed Tyler the positive test, his eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. He lifted me in his arms and spun me around. "I'm going to be a dad. Sophia, this is the best day of my life." For a brief moment, I believed things were going to be different, that he'd soften, maybe even treat me like his equal again. But then we had the ultrasound and saw 2 little heartbeats instead of 1. Twins. I still remember the way his smile faltered, how he went quiet on the drive home. That night, he barely spoke, just stared at the TV while I tried to process what it meant to carry two lives inside me. From then on, every little thing I did seemed to annoy him. If I was too tired to cook, he'd complain. If I left laundry for the next day, he'd mutter, "What do you even do all day?" He hated how slow I moved, how big I'd gotten. He joked about my swollen ankles and the way I waddled, calling me Penguin like it was a nickname I should laugh at. I cried a lot during those months, though I hid it from him. I'd stand in the bathroom, hands braced on the counter, staring at my reflection and whispering, "Just hold on, once the babies come. He'll love you again. He'll see what you went through and appreciate you." But deep down, something in me already knew the truth. I wasn't his partner anymore. I was a piece of furniture, useful when needed, invisible when not. And yet I still clung to hope because what else did I have? No parents, no close friends, no income. Just Tyler and the life I thought we were building together. I didn't realize then that life had already started to crack, and it wouldn't take much for it all to fall apart. It was late December, just a week before New Year's, when it happened. I'd been restless all morning, looking at the smudged windows in our apartment and thinking about how I wanted the place to look nice before the babies came. Tyler had brushed me off the night before when I asked for help. "I've been working all week, Sophia. I'm exhausted. Can't you handle one thing on your own?" So I tried. I grabbed a stool, a bucket of warm soapy water, and a rag. My belly felt enormous, but I told myself I could do at least the bottom half of the window, just enough to feel like I'd done something useful. The stool wobbled as I reached forward, and for one terrifying second I felt weightless. Then came the crash, with hitting tile, and a sharp pain in my back as I landed awkwardly on the floor. My breath caught in my throat. Then I felt it, a sudden warm rush between my legs. My water had broken. Panic set in immediately. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, and called Tyler. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Still nothing. "Come on, Tyler, pick up. Please." My chest tightened and tears blurred my vision. I scrolled through my contacts, meaning to call a neighbor, but my fingers slipped. I didn't even see which name I hit before I pressed send. "Hello," a man's voice answered. It took me a second to place it. David Miller, Tyler's boss. My voice came out broken. "David, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to call you, but my water just broke and I can't get a hold of Tyler. Please, I need help." There was no hesitation in his response. "Stay where you are. I'm on my way." Minutes later, David appeared at the door, his face full of concern. He didn't ask questions, didn't waste time judging why his employee's pregnant wife had accidentally called him instead of her own husband. He just scooped up my hospital bag from the hallway closet and helped me to the car. At the hospital, everything moved fast, too fast. Nurses rushed me into a delivery room, hooking up monitors and starting IVs. "You're early, sweetheart," one of them said gently. "But don't worry, we're going to take care of you and those babies." I gripped the side rails as the contractions came, sharp and relentless. "Where's my husband?" I gasped between breaths. No one had an answer. I sent another text, then another, but the screen stayed blank. No response. Hours later, I held two tiny boys in my arms, their little chests rising and falling with effort. The nurses whisked them away to the neonatal unit, and I lay there, exhausted and numb, wondering why Tyler hadn't shown up. David stayed in the hallway the whole time, pacing like a worried family member. When the nurse told him he could step in for a moment, he just smiled at me softly and said, "You and the babies are safe now. That's what matters." I wanted to cry from gratitude and humiliation all at once. This man, practically a stranger, had done what my own husband wouldn't. He showed up. He made sure I wasn't alone in one of the scariest moments of my life. As they wheeled me into recovery, I clutched my phone, staring at the unread messages I'd sent Tyler, and whispered to myself, "Were you? How could you not be here?" I didn't know it then, But this was the moment everything between us would shatter, because when I finally did go home, I'd find out exactly where he had been and why he hadn't answered. 3 days later, I was discharged from the hospital. The twins were stable, but small, tucked safely in their car seats that looked far too big for their tiny bodies. My arms ached from holding them, not because they were heavy, but because I didn't want to let go. They felt fragile, like porcelain, like something I'd been trusted with but didn't quite deserve. David was there again. I hadn't asked, he just showed up saying, "You shouldn't be driving in this condition, Sophia. Let me help." I wanted to protest, to say I could manage, but the truth? I couldn't. I was sore, weak, and emotionally drained. We pulled into the apartment parking lot, and I noticed something immediately. Tyler's truck wasn't there. I told myself he was probably at work or running errands. But when we stepped inside, that illusion collapsed. The living room was half empty. The TV stand was bare, no flat screen. The shelves that once held his sports trophies and framed photos were stripped clean. In our bedroom, his dresser drawers were open and empty, closet hangers swinging slightly like they'd been disturbed in a hurry. Even the cheap watch I bought him last Christmas was gone from the nightstand. I stumbled back, clutching the doorframe for balance. No, this can't be real. My mind scrambled for explanations. Maybe he moved things because we were remodeling. No, that made no sense. Maybe there had been a break-in, but there was no sign of forced entry. Then I saw it, a single sheet of paper on the kitchen counter. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. The handwriting was rushed, almost sloppy, like he couldn't get out fast enough. "Sophia, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Don't try to find me. We're getting a divorce. Tyler." That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just a few cold lines to end our marriage. The paper slipped from my fingers, fluttering to the floor as if even it didn't want to carry his words. My knees buckled, and I sank into a chair, clutching one of the baby carriers to my chest. Why? Why would you do this to us? To them? The twins stirred, one letting out a tiny cry, and I rocked the seat gently, tears streaming down my face. David picked up the note, silently read it, then set it back down without a word. He didn't rush to comfort me or tell me it would be okay. Instead, he crouched beside me, his voice calm and steady. "You're not alone, Sophia. Not anymore. I'm here and we'll figure this out." That broke something in me. I'd been holding everything in, every insult, every lonely night, every fear about the future, and now it poured out. I sobbed uncontrollably, clinging to my baby's carrier like it was the only thing anchoring me to the world. David waited, patient, letting me cry until the waves passed. Then he asked gently, "Do you have anyone else you can call? Friends? Family?" I shook my head. "No, it's just me now." He nodded slowly, like he understood more than he said. "Then you focus on your boys, Sophia. Let me help with the rest." For the first time in days, I felt something other than fear. It wasn't happiness, not even relief. It was the smallest flicker of safety. And yet, beneath it, the grief was sharp and raw. I had just given birth to 2 beautiful boys, and their father had walked away without even seeing them. That night, while the babies slept in their bassinets, I sat on the couch, staring at the note again. I whispered to myself, "I guess it's just us now, just me and them." And for the first time, I truly believed it. It was a week later when the phone rang, just past midnight. I was sitting in the nursery, rocking one of the twins who refused to settle. The other slept peacefully, his tiny chest rising and falling in perfect rhythm. My body ached, my eyelids heavy, but the sound of the ringtone jolted me awake. I glanced at the screen. Tyler. My chest tightened. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the answer button. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let him vanish completely like he wanted. But some stubborn part of me hoped for an apology, maybe even an explanation. I answered, "Tyler." His voice slurred. "So, you moved on already, huh? With Miller? That your big plan, Sophia? Get knocked up and then cozy up to my boss, I froze. What are you talking about? You left me, Tyler. You left us. He laughed, a cruel, sharp sound that made my stomach turn. Don't play innocent. I know what's going on. Everybody does. You think I don't know how he looks at you? You probably sent that text on purpose. Pathetic. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. You're drunk. Call me back when you're sober. No, you listen. His voice rose, distorted through the speaker. You ruined my life. And guess what? I'm doing just fine. Better than fine. I've got someone who actually appreciates me, and I've got plans. Big ones. You tell Miller to watch his back, because by next month his precious company's tech? Yeah, it'll be in my hands. I'm selling it, making real money, Sophia. While you sit there with your brats, living off pity. My blood ran cold. Tyler, what did you do? He laughed again, slurring over his words. Relax. Just business. Nothing you'd understand. Oh, and by the way, that apartment, my name's on the lease. You've got a month to clear out, or I'll have you evicted. The line went dead. For a moment, I just sat there, stunned, the baby's soft breathing the only sound in the room. Anger bubbled up, hot and shaking. It wasn't enough that he abandoned us. He had to threaten our home too? And now he was planning something against David, the one person who'd actually been there when I needed help. I didn't even think. I called David immediately. He answered on the first ring, his voice alert despite the late hour. Sophia, is everything okay? I told him everything. Every cruel word, every drunken threat, the scheme to sell company secrets. When I finished, there was silence on the line, heavy and deliberate. Thank you for telling me, David finally said. I need to take care of this immediately. You don't have to worry. But, Sophia, I'm sorry you had to hear that from him. I swallowed hard. It's not your fault. I can't believe he would do something like this. David's tone shifted, firm and commanding. Believe it. People like that always think they're smarter than everyone else. But he won't get away with it. True to his word, within days David's company launched an internal review. Security teams dug through access logs and project files. And then they caught him, Tyler, along with his new partner, trying to meet a buyer in a parking lot with stolen schematics. The police arrested them on the spot. When the news reached me, I sat quietly on the couch, staring at my boys sleeping peacefully in their bassinets. I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just a dull ache of finality. Tyler had chosen this path all on his own, and now there was no coming back. I whispered to the babies, it's just us now, but we're going to be okay. I promise. The weeks after Tyler's arrest were a blur. There were lawyers' calls from the police, and paperwork I'd never imagined having to handle alone. And through it all, 2 tiny babies depended on me for everything. 2 little souls who didn't care about betrayal or broken marriages. They just wanted warmth, food, and love. I was exhausted, running on caffeine and adrenaline, but there was no time to fall apart. I had to find a way to provide for us, to build a life from scratch. So I went back to what I knew best, teaching. Only now it was virtual. I posted online ads for English tutoring, using the only resource I had left, my laptop. Within a week, I had my first few students, people working from home who needed help with grammar and business conversation. It wasn't much money at first, but it was something. And every dollar felt like proof that I could do this on my own. David noticed, of course. He noticed everything. One afternoon, he dropped by with a car seat base for my second-hand sedan. You shouldn't be struggling to carry both carriers in and out every time, he said with a soft smile. Another time, he handed me a list of local clients who needed English tutoring. People from his company who wanted evening lessons. I mentioned your name, he explained. Only if you're comfortable, of course. I didn't know what to say. Nobody had ever gone out of their way for me like that. Not even Tyler, not really. David never hovered, never acted like I owed him anything. He'd stop by, help install a baby gate, or drop off diapers when he noticed I was running low. And then he'd leave, giving me space. Somehow he understood I needed to stand on my own, but he also wanted me to know I wasn't alone. His daughter, Chloe, loved coming along too. She was 8, sweet, and endlessly curious about babies. "Can I hold one?" she'd ask every time, and I'd smile and say yes, watching how gently she cradled their tiny heads. She called them my little brothers, and something about the way she said it warmed a part of me I thought had gone cold forever. There were still nights I cried, mostly when the boys refused to sleep and the weight of everything felt crushing. But slowly I started to see a future. Not perfect, not what I had once imagined, but ours. A future I was building with my own 2 hands, fueled by every ounce of determination I had left. One evening, while folding laundry at the kitchen table, David leaned against the doorway and said, "You know, Sophia, you're stronger than you realize. Most people would have broken by now." I laughed softly, shaking my head. It doesn't feel like strength. It just feels like surviving. He stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. Surviving is strength. And you're doing more than that. You're building something new. I looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time I let myself see what was in his eyes. Not pity, but respect and maybe something more. I pushed the thought away. I wasn't ready for that, not yet. But for the first time in a long time, I went to bed that night feeling like life wasn't just something happening to me. It was something I was shaping piece by piece for me and my sons. And I knew one thing with certainty: we weren't as alone as I once feared. It happened on a chilly spring afternoon, one of those days when the sun looks warm but the wind cuts straight through you. I had bundled the twins into their stroller for a walk, thinking the fresh air might lull them to sleep and clear my own head. The park near our apartment had a small lake with a narrow paved path running along its edge. I'd walked it dozens of times without issue, but that day I wasn't paying attention. I was texting a student to reschedule a lesson, pushing the stroller with one hand when the front wheel caught on a raised edge of the path. The stroller jolted forward. One of the diaper bags swung loose, and for a terrifying second, the stroller tipped. I lunged, grabbing it with both hands, pulling it back upright, my heart hammering. "Whoa, careful!" I turned, breathless, to see David jogging toward me. He had that same concerned look I'd seen the day of the premature birth, like the world could fall apart at any moment and he'd hold it together if I couldn't. "You okay?" he asked, already checking the boys, who were fine, startled but fine. I nodded, embarrassed. "I'm fine. I just wasn't paying attention." David crouched beside me, tightening the strap on the bag and testing the wheels of the stroller. "You don't have to do everything alone, you know. It's okay to need help sometimes." I wanted to snap back, to tell him I was handling it, but the truth was written all over me. Dark circles under my eyes, shoulders tense, a pace of life that hadn't let up since the day Tyler walked out. I bit my lip and looked away. We walked back together in silence, him matching my pace, his hand occasionally steadying the stroller whenever the path got uneven. When we reached the apartment steps, I finally said softly, "Thank you for everything. You've been there more than anyone ever has." He shrugged slightly. "You don't have to thank me. I'm just doing what's right." But then he hesitated, his hands in his pockets. "Sophia, I need to say something, and I need you to hear me out. No pressure, no expectations." I froze, still gripping the stroller handle. "Okay," he took a breath. "I care about you. Not because I feel sorry for you, and not because you need someone. I care because of who you are, because you keep going, even when everything falls apart. I want to be in your life, but only if that's what you want to." The words hung in the air like they were too big for the space between us. I blinked, unsure if it was exhaustion or fear or something softer that made my chest ache. I don't know what to say," I whispered. "You don't have to say anything right now," he replied quickly, a small smile easing the tension. "I just needed you to know." We stood there for a long moment, the only sound the soft breathing of the twins in their stroller. And for the first time since Tyler left, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel. Possibility. When he finally walked back to his truck, I stayed on the porch, staring at the sky turning orange over Columbus, whispering to myself, "What are you so afraid of, Sophia? You deserve to feel happy again." I didn't have an answer yet, but for the first time I wanted one. A year can change everything. The twins are walking now, wobbly steps that make me hold my breath every time, ready to catch them if they fall. They babble constantly, calling out for Mama, and occasionally trying to copy Chloe, who loves teaching them new words. Chloe has become like an older sister, hovering proudly over them as if they were her own brothers. My tutoring work has grown too. What started as a handful of online students has turned into a full schedule, with enough income to cover rent, groceries, and even start a little savings account. I no longer worry about where the next dollar will come from. I built this life with my own hands, piece by piece, and it feels solid, like it won't crumble no matter what. And David, he's still here. We took things slow, just like he promised. He gave me space to heal, never pushing, always respecting my boundaries. But somewhere along the way, I stopped looking at him as the man who helped me when my husband abandoned me, and started seeing him for who he really is, kind, steady, and fiercely loyal. One evening, after the twins were asleep and Chloe was working on a school project at the kitchen table, David and I sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the city skyline. I remember turning to him and saying, "I don't feel scared anymore." He smiled softly, reached for my hand, and replied, "Good, because you don't have to be." We're dating now, officially. It's not a fairy tale where pain disappears overnight and love fixes everything. Some nights, I still wake up thinking about Tyler, about how quickly someone you trust can betray you. But then I look at the life I have now, my children's laughter, Chloe's gentle hugs, David's quiet strength, and I know I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. As for Tyler, I heard through the grapevine that he took a plea deal for corporate theft and left Ohio after serving his sentence. He hasn't called, hasn't tried to see the boys, and to be honest, I'm grateful. I don't want his chaos anywhere near the life I'm building. Sometimes I think back to that night, the fall, the panic, the text I sent by mistake. If my hand hadn't slipped, if David hadn't answered, I don't know where I'd be. Maybe still trapped in a marriage that was killing me slowly, or worse, completely alone, believing I wasn't worth more than scraps of affection. But life has a strange way of guiding you, even when it hurts. When I tuck the boys in at night, I whisper, "We're okay now. Mama's got you." Because it's true. We're not perfect, we're not rich, but we are safe, loved, and happy. I used to think I needed someone to rescue me. Now I know I rescued myself first. David just reminded me it was possible. And sometimes when I stand in the doorway watching my little family, Chloe reading to the twins while David laughs at their attempts to mimic every word, I can't help but think, all of this started because I sent a text to the wrong person. The wrong number. That saved my life. I hadn't been back to Willow Creek in 16 years. Not since the night I packed a duffel bag with my college acceptance letter still folded inside and took the 3 a.m. bus to Boston. I swore I'd never return, that I'd carve out a new life so far removed from the dirt roads and sour whiskey breath of my mother's kitchen that I'd forget it ever existed. And I did, until everything collapsed. It started with a phone call I never expected. Not from a neighbor, not from a hospital, not even from the local church, because, of course, no one in town knew where I'd gone. The news came from an email buried in the company bankruptcy paperwork. Our logistics firm, mine, had failed. My business partner siphoned the assets, vanished overseas, and left me with lawsuits and a frozen bank account. And suddenly, with nowhere else to run, all roads pointed backward, toward the one place I never thought I'd see again. I arrived on a bitter October afternoon, the kind that smelled like cold earth and dead leaves. My rental car rattled along the gravel path like it knew it didn't belong here. Willow Creek hadn't changed much, still just a speck on the map of Vermont, where the fields outnumber the people and gossip moves faster than cell reception. I passed the old general store, closed now, the feed mill, the cemetery, then finally my childhood home. It looked smaller than I remembered. Grayer. The paint had long since surrendered to time, and the front steps leaned like tired bones. But the apple tree in the yard still stood tall, its twisted branches bare now, reaching into the gray sky like fingers. I parked by the front gate, heart pounding harder than I wanted to admit, and sat there gripping the steering wheel. Why did I come back? What was I even hoping for? The wind pushed a swirl of leaves across the path as I stepped out of the car. The air bit at my face. I hesitated at the gate, then pushed it open. It creaked like it remembered me. The yard was clean. That stopped me. Someone had swept the leaves, stacked firewood by the shed. This wasn't the chaos I expected. I climbed the steps slowly, trying to reconcile the memories in my head with what I was seeing in front of me. Before I could knock, the door opened. A man stood in the doorway. Early 30s, lean with dark blonde hair and the kind of quiet posture that makes you pause. He wore a flannel shirt, sleeves rolled, a dish towel in one hand. His eyes, blue-gray and steady, met mine, and for a moment neither of us said a word. Then he asked, "Can I help you?" I blinked. I'm looking for Martha Whitaker. This is her house." His expression shifted. Not surprise. Recognition, maybe. Or something else entirely. "She's here," he said slowly, "but she's not well. Are you family?" "I'm her daughter," I said, and the words tasted like rust. A pause. Then he stepped aside. "Come in." I walked into the house I once escaped, and it was nothing like I remembered. The walls had been painted a soft cream, the floors scrubbed clean. There was a vase of dried lavender on the table, a faint smell of thyme and something warm, like apples and cinnamon, hung in the air. I didn't understand. "Who are you?" I asked, still standing in the entryway. "My name's Caleb," he said. "I've been living here, taking care of Martha since her stroke 2 years ago." "Stroke?" I echoed. My stomach dropped. He nodded. "Left side's paralyzed. She can't walk. Sometimes she forgets things. Sometimes she remembers too much." I stared at him. "Why you?" "You're not related," he finished. "No. My father was Michael Monroe. He used to live next door." Michael Monroe! The name rang faint bells from a childhood I tried to erase. "She was alone," he said simply. Nobody else stepped up. I wanted to ask 1,000 questions. Why him? Why now? Why not me? But all I said was, "Can I see her?" Caleb looked at me for a long moment, then gave a single nod. "She's in the back bedroom. Just don't expect too much." I followed him down the narrow hallway, past the old framed photos of a younger Martha, photos I never remembered seeing, and stopped outside a closed door. Caleb didn't knock. He just opened it gently and stepped aside. The room smelled of medicine and mint tea. The blinds were drawn halfway. On the bed, propped up by pillows, was my mother. She looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. Her gray hair was neatly brushed, her lips pale. Her left hand lay limp across the blanket. Her eyes, those sharp, slate eyes, flicked toward me as I entered, and for a second, something flickered there. Recognition. No, not quite. Her brow furrowed. "Who are you?" I tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. Then I forced them out. "It's me, Mom. It's Lauren." She stared at me for a beat too long, then shook her head slowly. "No, my daughter left a long time ago. You're not her." And just like that, the breath went out of me. I stood there in the room where I was born, where I learned to walk, where I cried into my pillow night after night as a teenager, and I felt like a stranger. Caleb's voice was soft behind me. "She has good days, and bad ones. This might be in between." I nodded, though my throat burned. I didn't cry. Not yet. Not even when she turned her face to the wall and said, "Tell her to go. I don't want ghosts in my house." Caleb gently guided me back into the hallway, his hand light on my shoulder. "Give her time," he said. "She needs time to remember, and maybe to forgive." But all I could think was, what if there's nothing left to remember? I didn't sleep that first night. Caleb offered me the old guest room upstairs. Said it hadn't been used in years, but he'd cleaned it just in case. In case of what? I wanted to ask. In case I came back. In case my guilt finally outweighed my pride. But I didn't say anything. I just nodded and carried my small suitcase up the creaky stairs like I belonged here. The bed was firmer than I remembered. The same floral wallpaper, peeled a little at the corners. There was a photograph on the dresser. Me, maybe 11, grinning beside a man with dark hair. Richard Donovan, my legal father, gone before I finished high school. I hadn't seen that photo in decades. I lay there for hours listening to the house breathe. It felt alive in a strange way, not haunted by ghosts, but by silence, the kind of silence that waits. I thought of my mother, how she had looked through me like I was a stranger, and of Caleb, who moved through this house with a kind of calm purpose I didn't understand. By morning, the sky was washed in gray. I went downstairs and found Caleb in the kitchen, frying eggs and buttering toast like he'd always lived here. Coffee, he asked. I nodded. He slid a mug toward me, then sat opposite. The silence between us stretched. Finally, I said, "Why are you really here?" He looked up. "I told you. I'm taking care of her." "Yeah, but why? You're not related. You could have walked away." He stirred his coffee slowly. "Maybe it's not about blood." "Then what is it about?" Caleb met my eyes. "Maybe about promises." Before I could press further, a soft voice came from the hallway. "Caleb." It was her. He stood, already moving toward the voice. I followed a few steps behind, heart hammering. Maybe she remembered. Maybe something shifted overnight. She was sitting up a little higher in bed, a knitted shawl around her shoulders. When she saw Caleb, her face softened. "Is there more of that tea?" "Of course," he said. "I'll bring it right in." Her gaze slid past him to me, her brow furrowed again. "She's here," Caleb said gently. "Your daughter, Lauren." My mother's face twitched. "I told you, I don't have a daughter." Something twisted deep inside me. "You did," I said. "You had one, and you lost her." Her eyes met mine. There was something there, anger, confusion, maybe grief, but no warmth, no recognition, just walls. Caleb returned with the tea and helped her sip from the mug. She didn't look at me again. I backed away and left the room, swallowing down something sharp and aching. Later that afternoon, I wandered into the living room. The house was still too familiar. The bookshelf where I used to hide behind dusty encyclopedias. The patch in the floorboard that creaked exactly when you didn't want it to. And on the mantel, photos. New ones. I stepped closer. There were pictures of Caleb and my mother. Him helping her in the garden. Her smiling, just faintly beside a basket of apples. And tucked among them, one I didn't expect. A younger version of my mother, arm in arm with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, kind-eyed, with the same jawline as Caleb. "Michael Monroe," Caleb said behind me, his voice quiet. I turned. "Your father." He nodded. "He was close with your mother, a long time ago." "How close?" He hesitated. "They were friends, before your father." I stared at the photo. She never mentioned him. "She wouldn't have," Caleb said. "People didn't talk about that kind of thing back then." "Talk about what?" He looked away. "They were in love. Once." The words landed with a strange weight. I couldn't explain why, but something in me shifted. That photo, that look on her face, it wasn't just a moment. It was a window into a life I didn't know existed. "She married my father," I said, almost to myself. Caleb nodded. "Michael told me he never stopped loving her." A silence stretched between us. I stepped back from the mantel. "So what?" "You're here to finish what he started." He looked at me, steady and calm. "I'm here because he asked me to look after her." I narrowed my eyes. "Before he died?" 3 days before," Caleb said. He called me, said he couldn't do it himself anymore, said it was his fault she was alone. His voice cracked a little. Not much, just enough to make me believe him. I sank onto the edge of the couch, staring at my own hands. This is insane. Caleb sat across from me. What's insane is thinking we can live our lives without facing where we came from. I said nothing. Later, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, I stood at the kitchen sink and watched the light fade across the yard. The apple tree was still there, twisted and bare but strong, maybe stronger than ever. I didn't know what I'd come here for. Not really, but I was beginning to understand what I had found. Not peace. Not yet, but maybe a beginning. That night, I couldn't stay in the house. The air felt too thick, the memories too loud. So I pulled on my coat, wrapped a scarf around my neck, and stepped outside. The sky above Willow Creek was vast and quiet, scattered with stars I hadn't seen in years. The same constellations I used to trace with my finger from the attic window, dreaming of anything that wasn't here. But now, I was here, and the stars hadn't moved at all. I wandered toward the old barn out back. It sagged at the edges but was still standing, like everything else on this property. Inside, the air was dusty, still filled with the scent of hay and rusted tools. I ran my fingers along the edge of an old shelf and felt something smooth, a frame. It was another photograph, not displayed, just left there, forgotten. It was the same man, Michael Monroe, but this time he wasn't beside my mother. He was alone, holding a baby. I held the photo up to the moonlight. The baby had dark hair, a round face, no name on the back, but something in my chest shifted. I slipped the frame into my coat pocket and returned to the house, careful not to wake anyone. I didn't sleep much that night either. The next morning, while Caleb took my mother outside for some fresh air, I wandered the house again, looking, not for anything in particular, at least that's what I told myself. But a part of me was chasing something, a thread, a crack in the surface. In the living room, tucked behind a row of worn paperbacks, I found it. A thin wooden box. It didn't lock. Inside, a small bundle of letters, tied with ribbon that had faded to pale pink. Most were bills, old cards, receipts, but at the bottom there it was, a single envelope. No stamp, no address, just her name in a man's handwriting. Martha. I didn't open it immediately. My fingers trembled. The paper was yellowing, the ink slightly smudged. I went to the kitchen, sat at the table, and unfolded it slowly. The letter was dated April, nearly 38 years ago, a month before I was born. Martha, I know you've made your choice, and I won't try to change your mind. But I need you to know, no matter what happens, I will never stop thinking of that child as mine. Even if she carries another man's name, even if I can't be in her life, you are my first and only love. And this baby, your baby, will always have a piece of my soul. Michael. I sat frozen. The words blurred. A piece of my soul. He couldn't have meant me. Could he? I read it again, and again, and again. Every time, the meaning grew heavier, clearer. He believed I was his daughter. I don't remember how long I sat there, staring at that letter, but at some point Caleb walked in. He paused when he saw me. You okay? I looked up, the letter still in my hand. Was your dad the kind of man who wrote letters? Caleb frowned. Sometimes. Why? I handed him the page. He read it once. His jaw tightened slightly. He wrote this the month I was born, I said. I know. You knew. He met my eyes. I found it a year ago. I didn't know if I should tell you. I wasn't sure if it was true, and I figured it wasn't my place. The silence between us cracked wide open. I grew up believing I was Richard Donovan's daughter, I said. He never hugged me, barely looked at me, but I thought that was just him, that maybe I did something wrong. You didn't, Caleb said softly. None of this was your fault. Then whose was it? He didn't answer. I stood and walked to the window. the letter still clenched in my hand. If he really thought I was his child, why didn't he come for me? He tried, Caleb said quietly, after your dad left, but your mother wouldn't let him in. The words felt like stones in my gut. She didn't want his help, Caleb continued. Didn't want anyone's. And by then he was already married. To my mother. I turned sharply. So what are we? You and me? He blinked. What do you mean? If we're, I hesitated. If I'm his daughter, Caleb's face changed. For the first time, real uncertainty crept into his expression. We don't know anything for sure, he said. That letter, it could have just been emotion. It doesn't mean anything biological. I laughed, but it came out hollow. That's easy for you to say. You didn't just find out your whole identity might be a lie. He looked hurt. I didn't mean it that way. I closed my eyes. I know. The kitchen felt colder suddenly. The floor beneath me less steady. I need to ask her, I said. Your mom. I nodded. She might not remember. She has to. I left the kitchen without another word and walked back toward her room. The hallway felt longer than before, every step echoing. At the door I paused. Inside she was sleeping, her breath shallow but even. A small fan turned softly in the corner, the only sound in the room. I stood there for a long time, watching the woman who birthed me, who screamed at me, who held my hand when I had the flu, and tried to imagine what kind of secrets she still carried beneath those bones. She didn't wake until almost noon. I sat in the hallway outside her door, knees drawn up to my chest, the letter still folded in my hand like some kind of key I didn't know how to use. Kayla brought me tea, then disappeared to the back porch, giving me space. Or maybe giving himself space from whatever this was turning into. When I heard her cough, I stood too fast and nearly dropped the letter. I hesitated for just a second, then opened the door and stepped in. Her eyes were open, cloudy but focused. She looked at me for a long moment before saying anything. Lauren, she whispered, like the name had dust on it. I stepped closer. You remember? She blinked. Some days, yes. Some faces. Yours comes and goes. I sat beside the bed. The chair creaked, like it had grown old waiting for me. I need to ask you something. She gave a tired smile. So serious, just like your father. My throat tightened. Which one? She flinched just a little, then sighed. You found the letter. I nodded. Was it true? Her gaze drifted toward the window. The trees outside trembled in the wind. Michael wrote that when I was at my weakest, she said. Pregnant, alone. Your father had left. Stormed out after accusing me of things I didn't say, didn't do. Didn't do. I didn't sleep with Michael, she said flatly. Not after I married Richard. But before. She closed her eyes. Michael and I were something else. Before Richard ever came into the picture. I watched her closely. You were in love. We were kids, she said, but there was no conviction in it. We were young and poor, and we thought love could fix anything. But his mother hated me. She thought I was beneath him. When Richard came along, educated, charming, with a job offer in Boston, I made a choice. You left Michael. I left myself, she whispered, and I've been paying for it ever since. I sat back in the chair, trying to breathe through the tangled mess that had always been my family. So then, Richard is my father. She nodded. By blood, yes, though I sometimes wonder if that makes a man a father. He didn't want me. He didn't know how, she said. He didn't know how to love someone who needed him. I let the silence settle. My hands rested on my knees, clenched and pale. And Michael? I asked. What was he to me? She looked away. He was hope. He kept coming back, even when I pushed him away. After your father left, he came here one night and offered to marry me. Said he'd raise you as his own. But you said no. I couldn't take that charity. I couldn't let him fix a life I'd already ruined. I stared at her. That's pride, not love. She flinched. You think I don't know that now? I don't know what you know. Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. I made mistakes, Lauren. So many. And not just with men. With you. My voice cracked. You threw my report cards in the fireplace. I was angry, drunk, lost. You told me I was nothing, that I'd end up just like you. She didn't deny it. I said horrible things. I thought, if I kept you small, you wouldn't leave. I looked at her like I'd never seen her before. Not the monster from my childhood, not the fragile figure in bed, but something else, something broken, human. I left anyway, I said softly. She smiled, a bitter curve of the lips. You were always stronger than me. I reached for her hand. It was cool, brittle like winter branches. She didn't pull away. I'm not here to punish you, I said. I wouldn't blame you if you did. I'm here because I need to understand who I am. You're my daughter. And Caleb. I asked, you know what people might think. I know, she said, but you're not his sister, Lauren. That much I can promise you. A breath I didn't realize I was holding escaped. Her voice dropped. But there's more. I stiffened. More. She looked away again. Michael's wife. Caleb's mother. She didn't die in her sleep. I froze. She found out about us. Not just the past. She saw us talking one night and she knew. I never touched him, but she knew it was still there. My skin chilled. What happened? She left. Disappeared. They said she slipped on ice near the gorge. But people, they whispered. Are you saying? I don't know, she said. I swear it, but I carry that with me. Every day. And Caleb. He doesn't know. A long silence fell. I sat back, stunned. So much pain. So many lives shattered because no one knew how to speak the truth. My mother looked at me again. Don't be like me, she said. If you love someone, say it. If you want forgiveness, ask for it. Don't wait until your hands can't hold the pen. I wanted to be angry, but instead I felt tired. The kind of tired that comes after carrying a weight you didn't know you were holding. Do you regret it all? I asked. She blinked slowly. Not all of it. Her eyes met mine. You. I never deserved you. But I don't regret you. And just like that, I began to forgive her. 2 days later, we drove her to the rehab center just outside Burlington. The trees had started to shed, and the roads were lined with orange and gold, like someone had spilled an autumn-colored secret across the hills. Martha sat in the back seat, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes watching the horizon like it might offer her peace. She didn't say much during the drive, just the occasional comment about the weather or the tea they served at the facility. I wasn't sure if it was acceptance or exhaustion. Maybe both. Caleb drove. His hands were steady on the wheel, his gaze calm. I watched him from the passenger seat and tried to memorize the way the sunlight framed his face, the way his brow furrowed slightly when he hit a pothole, like even the road mattered to him. When we arrived, the nurse met us at the entrance with a kind smile. I helped my mother settle in, unpacked the small bag of clothes she insisted on folding herself. I placed the letter from Michael in her drawer, tucked beneath her reading glasses. She didn't protest. I'll visit, I said. I know, she replied, but not too often. I tilted my head. You've got a life to live, she added, one that doesn't revolve around taking care of me. Something in me softened at that. It felt like a blessing in her own sharp-edged way. When we left the center, the sky had turned gray with the promise of early snow. We stood in the parking lot for a moment, neither of us speaking. Then Caleb turned to me. Are you going back to Boston? I shook my head. No, I think I've run far enough. He studied me. Then what now? I glanced back at the road. Do you remember that old flax mill outside town? The one with the caved-in roof. I smiled. That's the one. You planning on turning it into a museum of bad decisions? Worse, I said. A business. He raised an eyebrow. Lauren, I know. It's risky. It'll take grants, investors, permits, a miracle or two. But I don't want to just survive anymore. I want to build something that matters. Something real. Here. He was quiet for a moment. Then, you're serious. Dead serious. I should warn you, small towns eat big dreams for breakfast. Then I guess I'll cook faster than they can chew. Caleb chuckled, and the sound wrapped around my chest like warmth in winter. We drove back in silence, but it wasn't the awkward kind. It was full, charged waiting. That night, we sat on the porch. The cold was creeping in, but neither of us moved. I held a mug of tea between my hands and watched the stars blink into view. You've changed, he said suddenly. How so? You're quieter, but not in a sad way, like the kind of quiet that knows itself. I let that sit for a second. And you? You've always been like this. No, he said. I was angrier once. At my dad. At the world. But after he passed, after I found the letter, I realized I had two choices. I could keep asking why, or I could start asking what now. I looked at him, really looked. What now? He leaned forward. We figure it out. There was a pause. Then I reached for his hand. I'm scared, I admitted. So am I. We didn't kiss. Not then. We just sat, hands clasped, like that was enough for now. A week later, I stood before the town council with a proposal for the flax mill. Caleb helped me design the slides, clean up the numbers, build something that looked real. And when the vote came in, 5 in favor, 1 against, I realized something I hadn't let myself hope for. This place wasn't just where I came from. It could be where I belonged. One morning, I walked past the apple tree in the front yard and saw the first snow falling, thin and silent. I stood there, bare hands to the sky, watching the flakes melt on my skin. Inside, the fireplace crackled. Caleb was making breakfast. And on the windowsill, beside the geranium Martha had planted years ago, sat a new photo, him and me, side by side, looking not at the camera but at each other. Later that day, I received a letter from the rehab center. It was from my mother. The handwriting was uneven but strong. Lauren, thank you for coming back. Thank you for not letting my mistakes become your inheritance. I see you now. I see who you are. And I am proud. Love. Mom, I pressed the letter to my chest and let the tears come. Not because it hurt, but because it finally didn't. Maybe this is what healing looks like. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet choices, just staying. And maybe love isn't always about beginning again. Sometimes it's about staying long enough to end better. Sometimes we spend years trying to outrun our past, thinking that if we just move fast enough, far enough, we can leave behind the things that hurt us. The silence, the betrayal, the words never said, and the ones we can't forget. But what I've learned is this. You can't outrun something that lives inside you. You have to walk back to it, look it in the eye, and ask it to speak. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a series of choices made in quiet kitchens on long drives, in the space between one breath and the next. And healing? Healing doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it shows up as a letter in your hand. Sometimes as a warm cup of tea. Sometimes as someone who sees you, truly sees you and stays anyway. If you're holding on to pain, waiting for the perfect time to face it, maybe this is your sign. Not to forget, not to erase, but to begin again exactly where it once ended.